Yeah, just David Jackson.
Oh, sorry.
What's his new name?
Oh, David Jackson, not David Johnson.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's true. Then we come to general business. Is there any general business? No, Ruben, you had something we were talking about over there. Yeah.
I've been delighted over the years at the way that Presbyterian schools and the Presbyterian church has come together more. But I've been having a few chats and thinking a little bit about the way that the Presbyterian church understands Presbyterian schools, and I feel like there's some more work that needs to be done there. For example, a Presbyterian faith, and technically according to the Book of Order, we as chaplains aren't able to baptise. May or may not be something that we are happy with, but I think given the change in our world and the significant role that Presbyterian schools have as missional, as a part of the Presbyterian church, I think it would be really helpful for, all work together and put some thought into it in time for next year to think, is there something that we can think about in terms of making some movement in this area. Does that make kind of sense? Yeah. Is that enough, Hamish?
Do you want to open?
Talking to Ruben about that, I think there's some issues here that go back a long way, and there's inconsistency between the presbyteries and between the various schools. It would be good to have that conversation, identify what those being able to go to General Assembly representing that worshipping community, whereas I think in Northern that's not the case. You have to come out of a parish environment, which is quite in thinking, and I think some at least discussion going around this and perhaps some consistency about the way this is dealt with. That's what I was picking up from what Ruben was saying. So it would be maybe the way to do this is for Stephanie to get a wee work group together to look at this and bring something back to the next annual meeting to be talked about. Does that sound okay? You happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Any other general business?
Just an acknowledgement, I think a congratulations to David Jackson on his ordination.
Yes.
Acknowledge that here.
Nice.
And Paul as well. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have you, but not and Paul as well. What was that? Yeah.
Oh, let's acknowledge.
So wonderful for our school and for yeah.
And that is an example of the church moving with where church looks like. That's a really good example. Yeah. Okay, any other general business? Okay. Close the meeting with a wee prayer. Dear God, we think into the future, we think into the year that is to come and all the work that goes on in these schools. For those who work as principals and chaplains and RE teachers in our schools, we ask for your blessing to rest upon them. And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forever. Amen.
Could Jordan go early, or you want to have a slight discussion and we'll start on time? I'm looking at the tech people, none of the rest of you, they're the important ones.
What's happening?
Well, we can start now, because our speaker is here, or we can wait till 4:15. So what are you happy with? Wait till 4:15, because that's when we say we're on. Right, okay. Yes, Christine.
I'm happy to say a few comments about this chapel.
Oh, please. Yes, go for it.
be a little bit of an opportunity to tell you a little bit about the space and a little bit about the journey that we went on to get to this position. Just by way of context, for those of you who don't know, St Andrews College has 1,560 students. There are 450 roundabout students in the preparatory school. We run the preparatory school with students from year 1 to 8, and in year 8 there are 100 students, so 100 in year 7, 100 in year 8, smaller classes further down the school. And then we're on to year 9, we take in a significant cohort that takes us up to 233 students in year 9. So pretty much the whole cohort from year 8 comes through. So that gives us the ability to take in 130 students, 135 students in year 9 who come from all over Christchurch. Around 35 to 40 of those students will be boarders, from mostly from various parts of the South Island, but a few come from the North Island as well. We maintain those 230 students pretty much right through to year 13, although like all of our schools there's a bit of coming in and going throughout that, but we certainly maintain those numbers. So when we were building our chapel, we wanted more capacity than the previous chapel. Our previous chapel, and there were a lot of people, not only Hamish Galloway, who had a big heart for our previous chapel, like those of you who are fortunate enough to have a chapel in your schools, you will know how much your chapel is loved by your community. And our old chapel was built in 1955. The school started in 1917, so they waited a long time to get their first chapel. And they fundraised, and as I say, they waited a long time for that vision that was there right from the start with the first chaplain, Alexander Thompson. It took a long time for him to get there, so it was much loved when it was built. It was built in memory of our old collegians who'd lost their lives in service to their country, and of course those who served in the Second World War. And so in 1955, of course, after the war had ended and people were keenly feeling the loss of their loved ones, it was a lovely way to commemorate those old collegians. Their names are over there in our memorial enclave. So we had not only was it the memorial chapel, but what you see over there in the memorial enclave with the names etched on the boards and the book of memory, that is obviously the same book of memories and plaques that were in the previous chapel. You will have noticed in our chapel service this morning that the head prefects came up and read the name of an old collegian, so we remember an old collegian every week in our chapel, and they go over to the book and ceremonially turn the page of the book to the next person. And of course it's lovely that Paul's managed to track down a photo of pretty much all of the old collegians who did lose their lives in service to their country.
Richard Carter did that.
Oh, Richard did that. Oh, well, we need to acknowledge Richard, yes. It was very, very important when we knew that we had to, the chapel didn't fall down. It was, what's the word I want, structurally compromised. So the board had to take the very difficult decision about whether they were going to re-strengthen the chapel or whether we were going to take the opportunity to deconstruct the chapel. We don't say we pulled it down, we deconstructed it very carefully and with great respect, and to build a new one. And of course there were a whole lot of thoughts and financial modelling that we did around that. One of the reasons that we saw it as an opportunity was to have more capacity in our building. So we can seat 900 students or people in this chapel. The smaller they are, the more we can squeeze in. And that's thanks to the wonderful pews. As you can probably tell, there are a whole lot of artefacts and furniture from the Memorial Chapel that have been brilliantly incorporated into this one. As part of the process that we went through, we took advice from Graham Redding, was absolutely wonderful advice, and Murray Ray from Otago University was also incredibly helpful. We had held community meetings. The most challenging people to take along with us on our journey were our old collegians, surprise, surprise. And so we really had to help them buy into our story and our vision. And I can remember Graham Redding coming along and being very helpful in a big meeting that we had over in the senior college. Paul was absolutely wonderful throughout, offered us a lot of guidance and was a huge part of our team. What we did is we decided, once we knew we wanted a new chapel, that we would hold an architectural competition. I found that absolutely terrifying. I'm in total awe of architects and the thought that I could judge them on anything and interview them. But we had David Shepherd from Shepherd and Rout. He was our architectural consultant. And we just went through the process. It's one of those ones which happens a lot in our jobs, that you've got no idea what the outcome's going to be. You've just got to trust the process and hope that a good decision comes out at the end. From the moment that we saw Patrick Cliff's sketching of what might be built on this space, we had a pretty fair idea that this could be something very, very special. So after the process of interviewing, we chose Architectus with Patrick Clifford and Malcolm Bowes leading the team. So one of the things that we worked very, very hard on as a school is coming up with a very comprehensive brief. We knew, we didn't know what the building was going to look like, but we did know what it had to be able to be and how this place needed to serve us and of course the special character of our school. So we just started on the journey, and I guess it was about a year of deconstructed the previous chapel, and we had a beautiful ceremony and laid the foundation stone on this site, and then we went on with the building of the chapel. Just in terms of its particular features, along the wall behind you over there is what we call the memorial wall, and one of the interesting things about earthquakes is that mostly the stained glass windows survived the earthquakes much better than other medium. And there are 1,000 bricks that have been of the old bricks. The bricks are a slightly different shape and size than those in the Memorial Chapel. And if you look on the outside of this wall, you'll see that there are some bricks that protrude from the outside wall of the chapel, and they're the old bricks. And they were, of course, important for our fundraising efforts, because just like boys in 1953 were able to buy a brick, and then we took that idea and we sold bricks. Inflation did a wonderful thing. I think they were 10, like a shilling in 1953, and they were $3,000 in our time. However, there was a wonderful uptake, and I know that families were very grateful to be able to have their family name as a brick donor, and I know that one of my sadness is that both my parents had passed away before they were able to see this chapel. In fact, my dad, who was a teacher at St Kentigern, didn't actually ever know that I'd come come to be the rector of St Andrews, so that's just sort of one of those things. However, I was able to buy a brick in their memory, and that's something that feels really special to me, and I think in time it becomes more special to you as you go on life's journey. The doors, the beautiful old wooden doors, and Hamish, they were much loved by the students and even more loved by those who came into our memorial chapel to be married. So it's surprising, isn't it, Paul, the number of our perhaps present parents who were old collegians and got married in the memorial chapel, and the number of them who come along and like to have their photographs taken in front of the doors. They get a bit of a surprise as some of the doors are doors into the toilet, so they're now, you know, nobody seems to mind. We just shut the door and that's all good. What else can I say? Oh, the gargoyles on the outside, a beautiful sort of old touch to old school chapels and churches. Yeah, the Oamaru stonework over there is also from the Memorial Chapel. Another really interesting thing is the bell. The bell was gifted to the old chapel by Anderson. Wasn't it in memory of Anderson? Or gifted by, anyway, can't remember. Something to do with Anderson. We'll have to go back to the book and check it out. Do you remember, Hamish? A.K. Anderson. I'm sure it was in memory of him. But anyway, so the beautiful bell, and the kids love ringing that bell, so they think that it's a real treat, and it is the most beautiful thing to walk across that beautiful bridge, and as the bell is ringing is just so lovely. Interestingly, this is part of Patrick Clifford's cleverness, is that bell is in exactly the same position as the bell tower was in the Memorial Chapel. So the bell hangs in exactly the same place as it was in the old chapel. Does it say?
A.K. Anderson.
He gifted it.
Well, it came from his will, from out of his estate.
Ah, there you go. Great. So that's wonderful. Another interesting little thing that happened as regards to that site, on the top of the old bell tower that was up there was a weather vane that was on top of, and when we constructed the design of this chapel, we couldn't figure out where on earth the weather vane was going to go. And so it sat languishing on the bottom field behind the tennis courts for about 10 years. And last year somebody brought it to my attention that the weather vane was getting a pretty raw deal down there. And every year we look for an idea for our old collegiate, or our students who are leaving the college, so the year 13 students, to get together and to come up with something that they would like to gift to the college to be remembered by as a year group. It's a fraught thing. I can tell you, I don't know if anybody else does it, but it's one of the biggest nightmares of the year is to try and come to a compromise with the year 13s, because they come up with some pretty wacky things that you don't want, you know, like a painted mural or something like that. Anyway, somebody came up with the idea that we could restore the weather vane, and it is actually across the river. Yeah, over by the cricket pavilion. You might be able to see it from where you're sitting. And so it was really lovely. The kids didn't like the idea much. It wasn't nearly as exciting enough for them. But in time, when they remember the story and why it's there, and of course it's in a direct line with where it used to be as well. So that's just another. Our schools are full of stories, aren't they? And don't we love them all? The pews are the same pews that were in the previous chapel. They did need to be cut down to the various lengths because, of course, with it being this semicircle, They all had to be glued together and cut to these different lengths. They didn't have any padding on them in a good Presbyterian tradition, but we've got soft now, so we had the padding made, and I think the students, well, they don't know any different now, they think it's always been like that, but some of us remember how hard those previous pews were. And they worked very well. While we did want this to be a space that appropriate other things can happen in, and that is sometimes a conference. We packed out this chapel last week with the Pacifica Awards. The first time we've been able to host the Canterbury Pacifica Student Supreme Awards for academic and leadership excellence. And so we had students and whānau here, and that felt really, really special. Of course, there are lots of funerals, particularly old collegians, weddings, a bit few and far between baptisms, but some of our families want to come back and have a baptism. What else goes on here? Music concerts. It is a favoured venue. Another thing Patrick Clifford got right were the acoustics. Absolutely amazing to hear a choir in here. Ooh, what else? What have I missed? Time to go.
Yes.
Time to finish. Anyway, enjoy. It just feels so special to have you all here. Thank you.
John McGlashan College, Dunedin. Christine, thank you for that was an excellent use of time. Thank you. Wonderful story and very, very important to be told. Thank you, Christine, also and your team for a most delightful dinner at midday. All bodes well for tea tonight.
You better find time for a walk.
But really, your hospitality here is superb, just by the way. Jordan Redding, Reverend Dr. Jordan Redding, introduced himself so well this morning, I don't know what I can say in introducing him, other than the fact that since he arrived in Dunedin as a little nipper, following in his old man's footsteps, as he had just been appointed as principal at the Theological College at Knox, I've known Jordan. And it has been an absolute pleasure to have been alongside him in all sorts of ways over that time. One of the earliest memories, Jordan, would be receiving your first album, your first LP, or I call them LPs, I suppose it was a CD, Came Inside. Jordan is an accomplished musician and writer and songwriter. Beautiful singing voice and leads from the front in music so well. And this started at an early age when he had arrived in Dunedin. He became part of our youth group at church and from there went on to do his own study. Reading as a name is synonymous with Presbyterianism in New Zealand, but mark my words, although this apple hasn't fallen far from the tree, he is his own man, not to be confused with his father, Graham Redding, but indeed is one unique being. I'm in the privileged position now of